am happy to have a great guest with us here to talk about his experience in the sport. He's the #1 ranked junior in Canada. He's won an impressive 5 national championships, 2 gold medals at this year's Canada Winter Games, and countless titles here in BC. So please welcome Jacob Lynn. Hi, Jacob.
Hey, Colin.
So Jacob, let's get things started. So how did you first get involved in squash, and what drew you to the sport?
Well, to be honest, my first impression of squash wasn't very good. At first, when I heard the sport squash, you know, why is it named after a vegetable? It's not like other sports like badminton, basketball, or soccer. At least they sound like a sport. But when you talk about squash, the first thing that comes to your mind is a vegetable. And so at first I thought, should I play squash? I mean, it has a weird name, and I had a bad impression of it. But, the first day I stepped on court, wow, I just fell in love with the sport. Squash, most people compare squash to chess on 2 feet, right? It's a mental and physical game. And, squash has 4 walls. There's so much variation. There's the height of the ball, the speed, the angle, and there's so much thinking involved in this game. And it is this critical thinking aspect of squash that I really, really enjoy.
That's awesome. Yeah. So now, kind of fast forwarding through to you today, why don't you share some highlights from your squash career? Perhaps even some of the impressive accomplishments you've had this season.
Oh, this season was extremely, extremely special for me because this is probably one of the last years of my junior career. Um, One of the highlights of the season was US Junior Open. So I got top 4. I got into the semifinals. Now, this was a dream because US Open is one of the most prestigious tournaments in the world. And getting into the semifinal is, astounding because it's a tournament with all the best players. And it just shows that how hard I've worked throughout the years, and the people who have supported me all over the years. And I feel very proud of myself, and I have to give a huge thanks to the people that have helped me along the way.
Awesome. So Jacob, I've heard you're quite the student. I know you're involved with the sport outside of just playing, through your incredible work through the Sunshine Squash Club. So with all of this, you're balancing a lot of academics, high performance sport, other commitments. That's super challenging. So what strategies have you found that help you kind of juggle all those responsibilities and maintain that balance?
Well, for sure, for sure. Because during my high school year, especially grade 10 and grade 11, it got extremely, extremely stressful because first of all, I have to make sure I have to keep my grades up, and I also have a squash race. It was during the recruiting process for me for college recruiting. And also I had to manage my Sunshine Squash Club, and also, have to balance out my social life. So trying to fit all of these within like 24 hours of my day was very, very tough. Now, we've all heard of the term time management. All right. It's kind of cliche, but I think that was the main thing that helped me get through all this. And, there are ways to like help you manage your time. So for me, every day I had to like write down on my calendar what I had to do. I had to make a to-do list. And then I also became really, really obsessed with productivity. So I started watching a lot of YouTube videos on, how to be productive, like studying methods and how to like balance your work and life. And, I found a lot of these very useful tips on the internet that have helped me with my own life.
Do you have any specific ones you want to share for say a younger athlete that might be interested in getting a hang of that?
Well, I have one that's really good for me for studying, which is the Pomodoro technique. So basically, you study for 25 minutes and you take a break for 5 minutes, and then study for 25 and then break for 5. Now you do it over and over again. Now this is extremely helpful for me because I get to study and then I get to take a break. I get to recharge my energy, and then I know I have more energy to study. And by doing this kind of process, the cycle over and over again, I feel like I have like energy to keep on doing the stuff that I'm doing, and I also have time to take a break. And also I think one other important thing that I want to mention that have helped me balance my life is the mindset I have. So for me, I am a person who likes to, I call this the grind set mentality. So I try to put my best efforts into everything I do because I believe that hard work correlates with success. So for me, whether it's in squash, in school, I put in 100% effort. And also, I'm very grateful for all the opportunities I have because I know not everyone, gets to play squash, go to school. So I take advantage of these opportunities I have and be grateful for them.
That's awesome, Jacob. Thank you. So you touched on it a little bit in one of your answers, and part of the reason why we wanted to do this interview with you today has to do with the shirt you're wearing right now, because we were very excited to hear that you recently signed on to play squash at Harvard in the fall. So I'm wondering if you could just kind of break down your recruitment story, kind of tell us a little bit of your experience with that, and yeah, go ahead.
Well, the recruiting process can be really stressful, but I'll try to make it, I'll try to dive into the details a bit more. So I started emailing, all the schools in September of my grade 11 year. So I contacted 5 schools, Harvard, UPenn, Yale, Princeton, and Columbia. And at first, it was very hard to manage all of these because you're contacting some of the biggest schools in the world and you're just talking to like these coaches, and then you have to email back and forth with them and then arrange interviews with them. So it got really, really stressful. But then I tried to keep up my squash, my grades, and they were interested in me as well, so that was a good sign. And then at tournaments like US Junior Open, I would meet them, I talked to them. And then I was doing pretty well in the process. So during spring break, I went on campus visits to these schools. And the reason I chose Harvard is, okay, first of all, it's my dream school. And second of all, my campus visit was just amazing because Harvard, it's a big name, it's a big school. And when you're on the squash team, Harvard squash team is #1 in college squash. But when I'm around with the teammates on the Harvard squash team, they're super, super humble, considering the fact that they go to the #1 school and they're #1 in college squash. Now these people are humble, they're modest, and they treat me as a good human being. They respect me and they welcome me. And I just had such a good time with these people. It felt like a second family to me. And that's one of the main reasons why I picked Harvard. And so sometime around May, I emailed the coaches and called them, okay, yes, I'm coming here.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear that you had such a good experience going down there as well. I think that it will just continue to be that good of an experience going forward. So Jacob, obviously a lot of our younger athletes will look to you as a role model in this sense. And I'm wondering if you can give some guidance or some kind of what would you impart onto them as they're looking towards this kind of college recruitment process in their coming up years?
Well, yes, a lot of juniors here actually in BC, they are looking forward to going to school in the US and playing college squash. And I find there's this one problem like most people face. It's just that, when they're playing squash, they start to focus on school a lot. They think about school, or when they're doing schoolwork, they think about squash. So these things tend to, get mixed up. And then, people have like mental stress and mental health problems. And one of my biggest tips for them is that, when you're playing squash, only focus on squash. Don't think about school. When you're doing school, only think about school. Don't think about squash. There's a term for this. It's called compartmentalization, I think. And it has helped me a lot because, I play squash not because I want to get into a certain school, but because I genuinely have passion for squash. And when I study, I only focus on, gaining my own knowledge, focusing on my education. And then another thing is prioritize your mind and your body. Prioritize developing your mental strength. Because when you have a strong mind, when you believe in yourself, when you can stay persistent and resilient, you can do anything you want. And for your body, you have to make sure you recover. You recover well. So that means sleeping well, eating well, and staying active, which squash can help you. And once you have a strong mind, strong body, everything is possible.
That's great advice, Jacob. I'm sure everyone will really appreciate that. Let's kind of flip that last question on its head. So instead of thinking of yourself as a role model to younger players, I'd like to know a little bit more about kind of who your role models were as you were coming up in the sport. So does anybody stand out to you as role models, and kind of what did you get from them?
Well, when I just started playing squash back when I was 9 or 10, there were a lot of top players in BC. Just to name a few: Gavin Maxwell, Ryan Picken, Matthew Toad. These are some of the big names in BC. You know, I really looked up to them at tournaments. I will always watch them play. And I really like their game, their style on court, and they have inspired me a lot throughout the years. And right now I'm also kind of at that high level. I get to be on the same court as them. It feels a privilege to be playing against my role models. Just a few months ago at the Jericho Championships, I played against Ryan and Matthew. That moment was it felt like dream come true. Playing against your role model. And also, in addition to them, I also really look up to Ali Farag. So Ali Farag is, right now he's world number one, 4 times world champion, and he also went to Harvard. What I really like about him is that he's a real gentleman on court. He shows respect to his opponents. You can see from him, he claps for his opponents. He always has a smile on his face. It just looks, he really loves the game, you can tell. And when you have someone that respects other people, that's something that's very human about him. And I hope that I can develop myself, shape myself into someone, like them, like my role models.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that actually leads us really nicely into our next question here, Jacob. So one of the things when I've watched some of your matches, in addition to being very impressed by your performance, I've also been really impressed by your sportsmanship. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a bit more about what the importance is to you on having good sportsmanship and showing respect for your opponents on court.
Well, the term sportsmanship to me means playing fair, you know, calling your ups and downs, or calling your downs and your errors, and also showing your respect to your opponent, and then having integrity. Now, there are some dirty players out there, they're very physical, they block, they have a big swing. But to me, what determines if you're a good squash player is that whether you have like true skills, you win with your skills, not by playing dirty, not by cheating. You can get away with a match by cheating, but you can't get away, with multiple matches by cheating. So for me, showing respect to your opponent, calling your ups, calling your downs, calling your errors. It's not only respecting your opponent, but also respecting the crowd, the audience, the ref, and also yourself. For me, I believe in karma. So if I do something bad, I believe that, someone's going to do something bad to me. I think throughout the years, looking up at my role models, seeing how they play, seeing how they demonstrate sportsmanship has really helped me, understand the term better. It's about playing fair, showing integrity, and respecting other people, not only your opponent, but everyone else, including yourself.
Great, Jacob. Thank you. So we just have a couple more questions for you here. So for this one, I'd like you to put yourself kind of back in time to that kind of first time player that was kind of thought it was weird that squash was named after a vegetable. But if you could speak to that version of Jacob, what kind of advice would you give yourself at that age?
Well, when I was younger, I had a lot of injuries. So I had a lot of passion for squash. I trained very, very hard, but I didn't take care of my body very well. So I had this very, very severe injury on my knee. It was called Osgood-Schlatter. So basically, the bone popped out of my knee, and then there's like a bump. How bad was it? It was really, really painful. I couldn't bend my knees. And if I touch it, it hurts really, really bad. The reason of this injury was because I was overtraining and I didn't stretch properly. And also my body was growing. So this happened when I was 13, 14. My body was growing really fast, so the bone was growing. But then since my muscles were really tight, the muscles pulled out the bone. And so, during my journey, I felt this pain on my knee and I couldn't train as hard, I couldn't play as hard, and I felt really, really sad. So, looking back at that, I would tell myself, number one, take care of your body. Every session, make sure you spend some good time stretching. Have good food, sleep well, go to your physio, stretch, roll. Very, very important. If your body's not feeling well, you can't play well, you can't train hard. And for me, I'm a very, very tough person, I would say. I would bite my teeth and just go on court. But you have to know your limits, know when it's time to take a break and take a step back, just take care of your body, make sure it recovers so that you have enough energy, your body's feeling well, healthy to train hard again.
That's great advice. And so, Jacob, in our last question here, I'd like to shift it from the past to the future. And so I'd like to know a little bit more on like what are your goals and aspirations for squash going forward?
Well, I think squash right now is a fairly small sport. It's not recognized by many people, especially here in Canada. And one of my biggest dreams is that I hope squash can be in the Olympics. I've always dreamed about squash being in the Olympics, and I can represent Canada to go play that tournament. Now, one of my goals is that I hope I can promote the sport more, through Sunshine Squash Club or any of the activities or events that I can do in the future. I hope squash can become bigger because comparing squash to like tennis or badminton or soccer, squash is just as entertaining as those sports. And I hope I can share my passion for squash and help other people, see the beauty of squash and the uniqueness of our sport.
Awesome. That's great, Jacob. So yeah, I just like to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. I know that a lot of the younger players that look up to you are going to really enjoy hearing what you've had to say today. So Squash BC and I thank you both for taking the time today and also for being such a good role model and participant all the way through your junior squash career. We're very proud to have you as one of our athletes and have you representing BC.
Thank you so much, Colin. Thank you for taking the time. Also, I really want to give a huge thanks to Squash BC for helping me all these years, supporting me and my Sunshine Squash Club, and also my friends. And none of this would have been possible without you guys. Thank you so much.
We're happy to help. Thanks, Jacob.
Thank you, Colin.